All right, let's get right into it. We're about to pull back the curtain on something that controls almost everything you do. It's this invisible force, this hidden script that's guiding your every move, telling you how to act, what to say, and even how you're supposed to feel. You know that feeling, right? That cringy moment, that awkward conversation you just can't stop replaying in your head for hours or even days? Well, that's not just you being weird. That feeling is actually a clue. It's like a crack in the performance of everyday life. And it's that little crack that's going to help us understand this massive social script we're all following. So, section 1, the social stage. Because really, we are all just performers in the play of life. And to get a handle on that feeling of social panic, we have to start by seeing the world for what it really is, this giant, complicated stage. And guess what? We're the actors. The sociologist Erving Goffman, he had a name for this character that we all play. He called it our face. And no, he's not talking about your actual face. He means your public image. You know, the competent professional, the funny friend, the strong leader. It's the version of you that you want everyone else to see and believe in. And Goffman's whole idea was built around this brilliant theater metaphor. He said we have a front stage self, that's when we're on, performing for the world, playing our part. But then there's the backstage self. That's when you can finally let your hair down, drop the act, and just be you. The whole point of being front stage, it's all about maintaining that face. Okay, so what happens when the performance completely falls apart? Picture this. You're in a huge meeting, projecting that I've got this professional face, and then bam, you trip and spill coffee all over yourself. Goffman would call that a face-threatening act. And that hot red feeling of embarrassment, that's the alarm bell screaming that your public image just took a major hit. Everything you do next, laughing it off, apologizing like crazy, that's what he called face work. It's that scramble to repair the damage and save your performance. And here's the thing. The play never, ever ends. This isn't some 9-to-5 job. The stage is literally everywhere. At work, with your friends, online, even when you're just buying milk. We are always on, we're always performing. But all this acting, all this constant face work, it has to have a cost, right? What is the emotional price we pay for being on stage 24/7? Which brings us to our next section, the emotional price of admission. We're talking about the hidden work of managing your feelings, because that constant performance, it takes a ton of effort. It's this invisible work that nobody ever sees. And yeah, it has a name. So another sociologist, Arlie Russell Hochschild, she came up with this term back in the 80s, emotional labor. Her work was revolutionary. She studied flight attendants and realized they weren't just paid to serve drinks. No, they were paid to smile, to be calm even when the plane is shaking, and to take all kinds of grief from passengers without ever breaking that calm, friendly exterior. It's the work of making your real feelings match what the job description says you should be feeling. Now, she might have started with flight attendants and baristas, but let's be real. This idea of emotional labor is everywhere now. Just think about it. The retail worker who has to smile at a customer who's being a total jerk. The doctor who has to be compassionate at the end of a brutal 12-hour shift. Or the manager who has to act confident while firing someone. We are all, in some way, paid to perform emotions. But here's the kicker. The rules for this emotional performance are not the same for everyone, not even close. Take expressing anger at work. Research shows that when a man gets angry, he often gets a status bonus. People see him as powerful, assertive, a real leader. But what happens when a woman expresses that exact same emotion? She often gets punished, slapped with labels like a bitch or too emotional. It's a total double standard. So yeah, this labor is not distributed equally at all. It's not just about having to be polite. It's this extra, invisible work that some people are forced to do way more than others. It's exhausting, it leads to burnout, and it makes inequality even worse. And you know what? The burden gets even heavier when we start talking about race. And there's a term for this, racialized emotional labor. Think about it. In a lot of workplaces, whiteness is just kind of the default setting. So employees of color often have to do all this extra emotional work. They have to manage their reactions to those little paper cuts of bias, those microaggressions. They have to swallow their frustration when they're treated unfairly. They have to constantly police their own tones so they don't get stereotyped. It's like an invisible tax they have to pay every single day. Okay, so let's recap. We're managing our face, our feelings. But what about our words? That's our next section, switching your script. Because it turns out the script even controls what we say and how we say it. Yeah, this is a kind of linguistic acrobatics that linguists call code switching. It's this amazing thing we humans do, shifting on a dime between different languages, dialects, or just ways of speaking, all depending on who we're with and where we are. And let me be clear, this is so much more than just using slang with your buddies and then being formal with your boss. For a lot of people, especially people who have to navigate between different cultural worlds, code switching is a seriously complex and high-stakes skill. It's a survival tool. And people do it for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes it's literally for physical safety, changing the way you speak in a tense situation to seem less threatening. Other times it's about fitting in or making a point more clearly. It can even be about holding on to your own culture and identity in a world that's trying to erase it. It's incredibly strategic. Okay, let's make this real. Imagine a Black teenager in the school hallway laughing with his friends. He's speaking African American language, which, by the way, is its own complete rule-governed language variety. Then the bell rings. He walks into class, the teacher asks him a question, and instantly, like flipping a switch, he's using what we call standard English. The vocabulary, the grammar, the whole vibe changes. He's a master of two languages, and he's using that skill to survive and succeed in two very different worlds. So who wrote the rules? We've got this super detailed script for our face, our feelings, our words. It's a lot, which begs the question, where the heck did this all come from? Who's your original author here? To find out, we have to go way, way back in time. And luckily for us, a sociologist named Norbert Elias already did the heavy lifting in his incredible book, The Civilizing Process. He basically became a time-traveling detective, tracing how our manners and behaviors have changed over centuries. And you guys, what he found is absolutely wild. Stuff we would find completely disgusting today was just normal. People used to spit indoors. Everyone ate from the same bowl. You'd blow your nose on your sleeve. The first etiquette books in the Renaissance had to tell people, hey, maybe don't say hi to someone who is actively on the toilet. I'm not kidding. It took centuries just for the fork to become a thing. What this shows is that our feelings of shame and embarrassment aren't natural. They were built piece by piece over a very long time. So why did everything change? Well, Elias argued it wasn't random. It was tied to big political changes. As kingdoms and states got more powerful, they basically got a monopoly on violence. You couldn't just go and beat up your neighbor anymore. The state would handle it. This forced people to learn how to get along, to control their impulses, and to think ahead if they wanted to survive in this new, more complex social web. And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. The rules that society put on the outside, we eventually built them on the inside. The government's rules became our own internal rules. Social control became self-control. We basically internalized the whole system, and that's where feelings like shame and embarrassment come from. They're our internal police force, telling us when we've broken one of those invisible rules. So that leads us to our final section, the stories that power us. Because these rules we've put inside our heads, they aren't just random. They're fueled by the biggest, deepest stories that our culture tells itself. They're fueled by our worldviews. And this is a perfect way to see how different scripts can clash. For example, many indigenous worldviews are all about the group, about sharing wealth, and seeing the land as something sacred. But then, colonization came along and imposed a completely different script, a Western worldview that's all about the individual, about getting as much wealth for yourself as you can, and seeing land as just another resource to be used up. These worldviews are like the hidden operating system for our entire society. They're running in the background, telling us what's normal, what success looks like, what's right, and what's wrong. They shape everything about our world, from our bank accounts to the way we treat the planet itself. And you can see these competing scripts play out all the time, especially in politics. Just look at the question of why some people don't get ahead financially. The data shows that liberals are much more likely to point to things outside the person, systemic barriers or a lack of opportunity. On the other hand, conservatives are more likely to point to things inside the person, like a lack of individual effort. It's two totally different scripts for the exact same problem, and both are tied to those deep worldviews. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, first, our social lives are basically one big performance where we're always managing our face. Second, that performance takes a ton of emotional labor, and that work is not shared equally. Third, we use code switching to change our script depending on the audience. And finally, these rules weren't just invented yesterday. They were built over centuries, all powered by the deep worldviews we inherit without even realizing it. So, if we're all just actors following a script, who's the director? Realizing that the script exists is the first step to maybe, just maybe, changing it. Which leaves us with a really big question. History wrote the first draft, But who gets to write the next scene? What do you think? How does this social script play out in your own life? I really want to know. Drop a comment below and tell us about a time you had to do emotional labor or code switch. And hey, if you want to understand more of these invisible rules that run our world, do us a favor. Like this video, subscribe, and ding that little notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.